Labour, the USA, doesn't allow maggots in orange juice.
Yeah, so this is something that Labour have been saying quite a lot. Basically, they're saying that if there was a trade deal between the US and the UK after Brexit, then food standards could be slashed to meet those of the USA. And in the USA, they say that there are acceptable levels of maggots in orange juice and rat hairs in paprika. Now, this isn't true. This is a misreading of the rules that they have in America. What they have are levels at which, like, enforcement is mandatory. Like, there are no excuses. If the number of rat hairs in paprika goes above a certain level, then it doesn't matter if you go, oh, no, sorry, it was just,
That batch.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, it's Jeff who normally keeps that out, was away that day. There's no excuse. Like, it's mandatory. That doesn't mean that below that, it's like, oh, if there's only 10 rat hairs in your paprika, that's fine. It just means that there's the level where they absolutely legally must take action about it. And the thing is, we don't have that level at all in the UK. There is no level.
To check for rat hairs or maggots.
So on that interpretation, then we allow infinite maggots in our orange juice. And of course, the thing about this is there is a point behind this, which is that it's generally accepted that, like, the US does have slightly lower food standards than the UK and the EU do. But this idea that you're trying to sort of sell it as like our orange juice will just become riddled with maggots if we do a trade deal. That's not true.
That's not true. Okay.
Well, I mean, there's, I think, probably any business that was selling maggoty orange juice would probably go out of business long before trading standards could get a hold of them, frankly.
Right, so the Conservatives are saying that Labour's freedom of movement plan could increase net migration, right? So they're making a claim.
Yes.
Is that credible or is it not?
So the thing about this one is the Conservatives said that under the Labour's plan for extending freedom of movement, net migration could increase to over 840,000 people every single year. The thing about this is, as far as we can tell, that isn't Labour's policy. And we actually talked about a very similar thing last week as well, which is, Labour had a policy that they voted on at conference, which doesn't mean that it's going to be party policy in their manifesto or anything like that, to extend freedom of movement rights. And the Conservatives have taken this to mean get rid of borders completely, unlimited freedom of movement for everybody in the world. There's no reason to believe that that's Labour's policy. Now, even once you accept that and go beyond that, the way they've worked out this number is very, very strange. They worked it out assuming that every single country in the world would send people to us at the rate that Hungary did in 2004 when it joined the EU. That I don't know why.
Which presumably was quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, they chose. There was all the 8 new states joined the EU in 2004. Hungary actually had the lowest, so they did pick the lowest one there. But it's still a country that's just over there. It's easy to get from Hungary to the UK. The idea that people from the Philippines or Argentina are necessarily going to, if this thing happened, which is, as far as I can tell, isn't Labour's policy at all.
But it will be policy of employers, and things like the annual conference of the CBI today. If this country is overpopulated, if there is a strain on our infrastructure, our health services, our schooling, all that sort of thing, it's because big business wants cheap labour to keep its costs down without being responsible for any of the side effects. I always find it amazing that politicians take the flak on all of this when really it's capitalism that fuels the whole idea of migration.
I mean, it's worth remembering freedom of movement as constituted in the EU is primarily about, it's one of the rules of the single market, which is a trade,
and actually it works very well.
But, yeah, well, exactly. The crucial thing is because we've had freedom of movement in the EU for a long time, we've actually got quite good data on this.
Yeah.
And the data is pretty clear that actually there are very, very limited effects of migration on things like public services, on things like wages. There is some evidence of a very, very small effect for some low-paid jobs. Immigration might slightly reduce wages.
The big worry on immigration is from outside the EU, is it not?
So there's these questions, and this is part of the argument that's being made, is that post-Brexit we could choose more easily where we allow people to migrate from.
Yeah.
Because right now with freedom of movement from the EU, but not from the rest of the world, it's not that. But yeah, so this is the thing, is that a lot of the discussion around freedom of movement with the EU does seem to blend into discussion of broader immigration patterns from the rest of the world. And so I think it's quite important when you're talking about this to actually get down to being clear what it is that you're actually talking about and what it is that you're not. There are plenty of arguments that can be made, but I think it's important to actually be pretty clear about whether or not you're talking about one thing or the other.
Should we go on to the next one? SNP, leaving the customs union and single market will cost every person in Scotland £1,600.
True or false?
No, because they said will cost every person in Scotland £1,600. You might remember before the referendum, George Osborne came out with a similar sounding figure. If we vote to leave, then that will cost everybody in the country. It'll cost every household in the country £4,000, something in that territory, I think it was. This makes the same mistake as that did. Again, it is true that pretty much every model, every prediction says that leaving the EU will reduce GDP. But what the SNP have done there is they've just taken GDP, the value of everything in the economy, and divided it by the number of people in Scotland. Now, that doesn't work because the value of everything in the economy isn't shared evenly among everybody in the country. And so,
thank goodness you're there. I mean, they can basically say whatever they want. And they do.
And they do.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, is that it's GDP is a hard concept to grasp sometimes, It's this very distant, very abstract notion, and I can understand why politicians want to translate it into something that makes sense to your real life, But turning it into, this will cost everybody £1,600. No, you will not be £1,600 worse off.
Right.
Well, that's good.
So
I mean, you might be, but it might not be because of that.
It's true. And advice, and you have written to all parliamentary candidates saying, if you don't know, don't bluff.
Yes. Which I think is a really important thing, and it's
that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the thing. What we've written this week to every candidate who's standing, whose email address we could find, every candidate who's standing, to say basically there's a simple challenge in this election: get your facts right, back up your claims with evidence, and correct your mistakes when you get things wrong. Which I think is the most important thing. It's okay to make mistakes. I mean,
they're not going to. Who's going to stand up and say, "Oh, I got that wrong"?
Exactly. But this is the thing: is that this matters. This election matters. These are big decisions that the country has to take right now.
I think the media has a lot of responsibility as well, because if a politician rethinks someone or changes their mind on something, I think changing your mind is a very good thing, because it shows that you listen to people or that you adapt with the times and whatever. In the media, we see that as a weakness, and we nail people because they have changed their mind.
They're flip-flopping.
It's a gaffe, exactly. Yeah. And, I mean, this is the kind of thing, and it's the thing that we try and do. We spend most of our lives correcting politicians, going like, that's not right, you got that wrong. Whenever they admit a mistake, whenever they correct themselves, we always try to say, well done. That's the kind of standard that we want to see. Because it's okay to admit that you made a mistake, especially when you're talking, on live radio.
People like honesty, and they do feel that honesty is not necessarily a thing that you would link with most politicians. Do you not think the public can tell when someone's bluffing? If they're just trotting out a fact and they cannot back it up because they do not have the facts to back it up.
Do you know what, Jackie? I think it depends whether they are supporting that team, that politician, that colour or not. They'll forgive their own people bluffs, but they'll point them out with those who they're not in agreement with.
Also, you notice, this is the thing, it's like when you have your own beliefs, you notice the other side doing it more. You pick up, you'll go, wait a second, that's not right, you're bluffing. Whereas if it's something that you already agree with, you'll just go, that sounds right to me. Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing, and this is kind of on us as well, is to just always be keeping a lookout and just questioning. When you hear something that makes you feel like, oh yeah, that's really got me riled up, Yeah, that's the thing. Just take
Just
that.
check it.
Take that little step back, and just go. Wait a second. Is it true?
Yeah. But even claims. I mean, you get Joe Swinson saying, I stand here to be your next female prime minister and all that. And sometimes I think people, often if they say something enough, they themselves believe it. And talking about Lib Dems, Lib Dem voting intention graph. Now, this is from Northeast Somerset. Conservatives are polling 38%, Lib Dems 32%, Labour are on 8%. You see, I just think anybody can say that. I have no idea, is that true or is that false?
So the crucial thing about this is that they had this bar chart. I'm just going to hold it up, so if it's clipped up, you can see it there. Beneath it, there's really, really, really small print.
Which says...
Let me see how small it is.
Look, there it is. That's tiny. That is tiny print.
It's so tiny I can't even read it with my giant glasses on.
Yes, exactly. Helpfully, I've got it transcribed slightly larger print below. But the question, that is a real question that was put as a polling question to people in North East Somerset. The question was, imagine that the result in your constituency was expected to be very close between the Conservative candidate and the Liberal Democrat candidate, and none of the other parties were competitive. In that scenario, which party would you vote for? And the really weird thing about this is, so the result there, in the last election, I believe, was actually Labour were in second in the last election. Mm-hmm. They did this poll. Before that, they'd asked a question going, how would you vote? And actually, it was a good result for them, just not that good. They were in second in it. But then, for some reason, they decided to put out this bar chart that just has the most minute small print underneath.
That's a lie. How are they allowed to do that?
So, I mean, this is an interesting point. It's not a lie. It's just
ridiculous circumstances.
It's just slightly ridiculous. This is, of course, and this is the thing. You get this from every party that is basically in second place, or at least wants people to think they're in second place in a constituency. Because we have a first past the post system. They want to make it a 2-horse race all the time. And so that's why you get everybody saying, so-and-so can't win here. It's only us. We're the only party that can defeat whoever else it is you don't like. So you get Lib Dems doing it, you get Labour doing it, you get the Conservatives doing it sometimes. And this is part of the thing, is this desperate push. This is not even the worst of this, because this, at least, they did do some polling. What the other thing you see a lot of is putting national polling results into various sort of websites where you can predict what the vote will be in a constituency from a national poll.
Based on that,
Yeah, thing about that is that's really hard to do. It's really hard to do well, and there's absolutely no evidence that those models that they're using for these websites are going to be true or not. We won't know that till after the election.
Imagine if there was a vote for the best-looking man in the world between George Clooney, Brad Pitt and me, and George Clooney and Brad Pitt couldn't turn up to make the contest.
In that case, I think I would have to vote.
Would I win?
That's exactly the same thing. But they are actually claiming that's how it's polling.
No, exactly. And that's the thing is, and you'll see this especially in leaflets that you get through your door.